Did you know that studies show nearly 70% of people have at least one significant relationship that they wish they could revisit? It's wild how those first loves can stick with us. I never thought I'd see her again. My first love, the one who walked away 15 years ago without a word. And yet there I was, standing in a crowded cafe, watching her walk through the door, still recognizing her smile instantly, even though we were now entirely different people. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about closure, timing, and why some connections never truly fade. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Before I dive into today's story, take a moment to think about your first love. That person who made your heart race for the very first time. The one whose name still brings a slight ache of nostalgia whenever you hear it. First loves are powerful because they happen when we're still becoming who we are. They shape us in ways we don't fully understand until years later. That's what today's story is about, how my first love continued to influence me long after she was gone, and the unexpected journey that brought us face to face again after 15 years of silence. For those of you who've ever wondered what if about someone from your past, this story might resonate with you in ways you don't expect. Because reconnecting with my first love taught me something profound about myself that I never saw coming. When Ellie left town the summer after graduation, we promised to stay in touch. But life gets complicated quickly at 18. Different colleges, new friends, the excitement of independence. Gradually, our daily calls became weekly, then monthly, then stopped altogether. I told myself I was over it. I dated other people, built a career, created a life I was proud of. But there was always this quiet, persistent question in the back of my mind: what happened to her? Was she happy? Did she ever think of me? Social media made it worse. I'd find myself hovering over the search bar, typing the first few letters of her name before closing the app. I didn't want to be that person, the one who couldn't let go of the past. So I buried those feelings and convinced myself that some stories don't need endings. But that's the thing about unresolved chapters in our lives, they don't just disappear because we ignore them. They linger, subtly influencing our choices, our relationships, our ability to be fully present. I realized this pattern had followed me for years. I'd always hold something back in relationships, always have one foot out the door. And deep down, I knew it connected to how abruptly things ended with Ellie, without explanation, without closure. Then last year, my mom called to tell me she was selling our childhood home. I flew back to help her pack, and found myself in my old bedroom, sorting through boxes of high school memorabilia. That's when I found it, a small wooden box containing the notes Ellie had written me, pressed flowers from prom, ticket stubs from movies we'd seen together. As I held these fragments of our past, something shifted inside me. These weren't just relics of a teenage romance, they were pieces of my foundation, part of what made me who I am. I realized then that I needed to find her, not because I wanted to rekindle something, but because I needed to understand what had happened. I needed to close this chapter properly so I could fully open new ones. The search wasn't easy. She had a common last name, and apparently wasn't much for social media. But eventually, through a mutual friend, I learned she was living just 3 hours away in the same city as my cousin. She had become a pediatric nurse, never married, and had moved back to the area just last year. I debated for weeks about reaching out. What would I say? What if she didn't remember me the same way I remembered her? What if she didn't want to hear from me at all? Finally, I drafted a simple email, casual, friendly, making it clear there was no pressure to respond. 3 days later, her reply appeared in my inbox: "I've thought about you too." I'd love to catch up. We agreed to meet at a cafe halfway between our cities. I arrived early, nervously rehearsing what I might say, watching the door each time it opened. And then suddenly, there she was. 15 years older but with the same warm eyes, the same slight tilt of her head when she smiled. For a moment, we just looked at each other, the past and present colliding in this crowded cafe. "Hi," she said softly, and something about her voice broke the tension. We hugged, awkwardly at first, then genuinely. Over coffee that turned into lunch that turned into dinner, we rebuilt our timeline. She told me how her father's sudden illness had forced their family's abrupt move, how she'd written me letters she never sent because she was drowning in grief and responsibility. I told her about my life, my work, my struggles to fully commit to relationships. But the real moment came when she said, "I need to apologize to you." She reached for her bag and pulled out an envelope, worn at the edges from years of handling. "I wrote this to you 2 weeks after we moved. I never sent it because I was afraid you'd moved on, afraid you'd ask me to come back when I couldn't." Inside was a 5-page letter explaining everything: her father's diagnosis, her mother's breakdown, her own guilt at having to choose family over our relationship. And at the end, a line that stunned me: "Loving you taught me what real love feels like." I hope someday I find that again, and I hope you do too. All these years, I'd carried this weight, this idea that what we had wasn't real enough to deserve an ending. And all these years, she'd carried her own burden of having to make an impossible choice at 18. As we parted that evening, something had healed in both of us. Not because we rekindled our romance, we didn't. We had both become different people with different lives. But because we finally honored what we'd been to each other by giving it the respect of a proper goodbye. In the months since that meeting, I've noticed changes in myself. I'm more present in my relationships. I communicate more openly when something bothers me. I don't fear abandonment in the same way. Looking back, I realize first loves aren't just about the person, they're about who we become through loving them. Ellie taught me how to be vulnerable, how to care about someone else's happiness as much as my own. The sudden ending of our relationship taught me how much unresolved grief can shape us. By reconnecting with her, I wasn't trying to rewrite the past, I was freeing myself to fully embrace the future. Sometimes the most powerful closure isn't finding answers, it's making peace with the questions. What about you? Is there someone from your past whose memory still lingers? I'm not suggesting everyone should track down their first love, sometimes chapters need to stay closed. But I am suggesting that understanding how your past relationships shape your present ones can be incredibly freeing. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever reconnected with someone important from your past? What did you learn? And if you found this story meaningful, please consider subscribing for more videos about life's pivotal moments and the lessons they teach us. Next week, I'll be talking about how to recognize when you're repeating patterns from the past in your current relationships, so hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Until then, remember that every connection, no matter how brief, leaves its mark on us. The question is, what will you do with those marks? Will you let them become scars, or will you let them become stories?